As Student 1, I'm going to talk about the current dominant scientific understanding of why rocks have layers. Why do sedimentary rocks have layers? To answer this question, we must know the different types of rocks, in particular, how to tell the difference between the rocks. The most obvious way to see what type of rock you are examining is by the materials it is made of and how they are pressurized and formed. There are three different types of rocks: igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. To answer the burning question, why do sedimentary rocks have layers, we need to know how these layers are formed in all three rock types. The formation of rocks is important to help differentiate between the three types. Rocks are made up of minerals and are formed in different environments upon and within the Earth's crust. Igneous rocks are formed through the cooling down of magma or lava, which is molten rock from volcanic eruptions. The magma is then turned into minerals through crystallization, which are molecule structures to form crystals, or it freezes. Metamorphic rocks are the pre-existing rocks such as the sedimentary and igneous rocks that have been changed due to the pressures or temperatures within the rock formation. Depending on the two factors of pressure and temperature will depend on the outcome of the rock created. The current dominant scientific understanding of why sedimentary rocks have layers is answered simply through its formation process. Sedimentary rocks are made from different sized grains and can sometimes contain fossil from dead animals. These grain sizes are determined by the environment on which the rocks are formed. If the rocks are formed in fast, strong water currents, the particles are larger, such as sandstone, indicating a high energy environment. The sedimentary rocks such as mudstone made from clay-sized grains are left in slow, quiet water such as a lake, explaining why it is soft and crumbly. These sedimentary rocks are formed through cementing together the different particles, usually in liquid form, but can also form in dry areas such as deserts. The creation of sedimentary rocks from surface is a very slow process, and the growth depends on the factors present, for example weather and pressure. When the transportation of rocks build up in layers, the process is called sedimentation. The layers are based upon the oldest particles, the ones sitting there the longest, with the newer ones placed on top through the weighted compression of particles, forming into a solid sedimentary rock. There are three different types of sedimentary rocks: chemical, organic, and clastic. The chemical sedimentary rock is formed when the water evaporates and leaves the minerals behind, resulting in the rock formation, for example rock salt. Organic sedimentary rock is the buildup of sedimentary remains such as animal bones and shells, resulting in the pile-up on the floor, then forming into layers, for example coal. Lastly, clastic rock are the most common known rocks, which is the basic sedimentary rock formed from broken up rock particles compacted together, for example sandstone. As shown, the current dominant scientific understanding of why sedimentary rocks have layers is purely from the formation through the different environments, particles, pressure, and weathering present at the time. All these different factors work together to produce sedimentary rocks, whether they are clastic, chemical, or organic. The transportation of these particles, which then settle on the surface, are compacted together, forming the layers that we see. Without the compaction of these particles together, the formations of rocks would not happen.
I'm Jessica Mclean, and I was student number 2. Our opening question was, why do sedimentary rocks have layers? So it was my job in this task to create 3 lessons where students have the opportunity to engage, explore, and explain why sedimentary rocks have layers. In the engage phase, all the students have the opportunity to engage with the topic and give a brief explanation of what they already know about rocks. In the explore phase, the students undergo an experiment or an activity where they can further their knowledge on the topic of sedimentary rocks or the rock cycle in general. The explain phase is where the students have the opportunity to explain and express what they learn about the sedimentary rocks, and this helps the teacher to fill in any of the gaps that they may have missed in their learning. So in lesson number 1, the opening question will be, are all rocks the same? This will allow the students to undergo an activity to demonstrate the knowledge that they already have on the topic of rocks. The activity will have the students split into 2 groups and write everything they know about the rocks onto the whiteboard. This helps the teacher engage what and how much the students know about sedimentary rocks and the rock cycle in general. In this lesson, the students will undergo an experiment that helps them understand and explore how sedimentary rocks are created. This activity will allow the students to make the connection of how sedimentary rocks are made and the rock cycle. The students will then be shown a video of the rock cycle to gain more information and more of a concrete understanding. In the experiment, the students will be given 3 different test tubes with different dirt, soil, and water. The students will then shake the test tube and watch it settle. They will then draw a diagram of what occurred with the dirt, soil, and water, making the connection of how sedimentary rocks are made.
The risk of the experiment is very low and it is unlikely that any incidents will occur. It is important to outline the rules to the students prior to eliminate any further hazards and to ensure the safety of all students.
This phase is where the students will be displaying their knowledge in a written explanation. The students will have guidance by the image of a rock cycle to jog their memory of how rocks are created. This is where the teacher listens to what the students have learned over the previous lessons, and if they need to go over any parts that the students didn't understand throughout the engage and explore phase.
It was my role as student number 3 to cater for all students of diverse learning needs within the task, focusing on rocks. The engage phase focused on students identifying the rocks, whereas the explore phase focused on students doing the experiment. The explain phase later on got the students to talk about the task in their own words, making it link to them in a way that they understood best. As you can see below, I have a table that is catering for students of diverse learning needs. On the left side, I have the learning needs into 4 headings: hearing impairment, intellectual impairment, physical impairment, and vision impairment. And on the right side, I have the learning need and its explanation, a brief explanation about what the learning need is and what we know about the learning need of the child. Let's begin with our first learning need, hearing impairment, profoundly deaf, thresholds greater than 91 dB. It is important that throughout this learning phase that the student has a sign language interpreter. In the beginning phase, in the engage phase, the teacher writes on the whiteboard and the interpreter ensures that the student can see and understand what the teacher is saying through the use of sign language. In order for this to work successfully throughout all the phases, a slow, moderate pace of voice and a clear and articulate tone from the interpreter and from the students and teacher is important for the student to understand what is being learnt. The student is to have a group as well, like everyone else, but the interpreter is to stay with the student to ensure that the student understands what is being learnt. In the explore phase, there will be an experiment and a video. In the experiment, the student will complete the experiment, and with the video, there will be subtitles, and the teacher will stop on the occasion and explain what is being learnt in the video. In the explain phase, the student will understand the video and its key points through the teacher, through her or his slow-paced voice. And then the student, with help from everyone in the group and the interpreter, will write a small explanation on the rock cycle and how it works. And then this will be shared with the class in a class discussion. Intellectual impairment, autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD. In the engage phase, it is important that the student is introduced to the classroom environment earlier on in order for the student to familiarise themselves with their surroundings and for the teacher to briefly talk about what they will be learning about, which is rocks. Like everyone else, the teacher will be writing on the whiteboard with the instructions of a slow, moderate pace of voice in order for the student to understand. The student will be given time to look at the rocks and identify which rocks are different into the 3 piles of rocks. Students will be in groups, preferably a group of 2 of a student that they're close with and familiar with. Then they'll write the whiteboard explanation in the group that the student is familiar with, so the pair, and then they will share the characteristics. In the explore phase, the teacher will explain the experiment, and then the students will complete their mini experiment with the rocks. Then, after this, I will watch the video with the subtitles, and the teacher will stop every few seconds to explain what the video is about. In the explain phase, it is the student's job with their partner to create a small dot point sentence about the life cycles with the aid of a photo if they'd like, in a way that they'd like to best, whether they'd draw this out in their book on the little whiteboards that they've given or on a piece of paper. And then at the end, they will share this with the class in a class discussion. The third student has spinal bifida, which is a physical impairment. Therefore, the student requires additional space in the classroom and easy accessibility around the classroom in and out. In the engage phase, the student comes into the classroom and the teacher ensures that there is adequate space and that surrounding areas are safe for the student to move around in the classroom, providing easy access check. When the teacher is writing on the whiteboard and assisting the student, if unclear on instructions, needs to ensure that the student can see what is on the whiteboard. In the groups activity at the start of the engage phase, students are to come to the student and make sure that access is still available. Give the student time to look at the rocks like everyone else and put them into 3 piles. Share the characteristics of the rock with others through verbal communication and assistance from the teacher if needed. In the explore phase, the teacher will explain the experiment to the students and the students will complete the experiment. Then they will watch a video with subtitles and explain what is going on in the video. In the explain phase, the student will be writing their explanation with their group about the life cycle and explaining this with aid of a photo if they'd like on how the rock cycle works, and this will be shared with the class. The last student in our example has a vision impairment, being partially blind. It is crucial that the student in this example wears glasses at all times. In the engage phase, the teacher makes sure that the student is wearing glasses at all time, and it is the teacher's job to use a black or blue pen when writing on the whiteboard. A slow, moderate pace of tone and clear and articulate tone of voice to communicate with the student is crucial. Give the student time to feel the rocks and identify which rock is which into the 3 piles. Make sure that if the whiteboard is being used throughout in the group, that they need to use bold colours. Share characteristics of rock with other students through verbal communication. The explore phase is similar to all the other students, and subtitles are still used in a colour that the student can still see. In the explain phase, the student, like everyone else, is going to use their knowledge of rocks and write a small explanation about the life cycle with aid of a photo if they'd like, to reference how the rock cycle works with their group using bold colours again. At the end, they will share their ideas with the class and discuss what they have found. Therefore, it is crucial and important that the teacher in this task caters for each and every child in the classroom, as said with the adjustments. It is important that as the role of the teacher, each child is included in every way and is given the equal opportunity as everyone else.
Hi, my name's Ali, and as my role of 4th person in the group, it is my job to create the assessment piece. The diagnostic assessment I have chosen is split into 2 different activities. So the purpose of the overall assessment item is to address and organise the students' learning with a visual interactive activity. This gives the students the chance to showcase their ability to identify and understand the types of sedimentary rocks, which will encourage them to alter their current understanding of the CDSU. This diagnostic assessment is to pre-assess the students' knowledge on their understanding of what sedimentary rock is, how the layers are formed, and the 3 different types of sedimentary rock. So the first part of the assessment looks at the definition of sedimentary rock, what is sedimentary rock and how the layers are formed, using a fill-in-the-blank activity. And the second part of the assessment looks at the 3 different types of sedimentary rock and how they are characterised. So the first part of the assessment piece is about what is sedimentary rock. It's important for students to really understand what sedimentary rock is and how it's formed before looking at the different types of sedimentary rock. So the first part of this assessment looks at what is sedimentary rock and how its layers are formed through a fill-in-the-gap activity. So the students have to use the words in the boxes to fill in the blanks to create the definition. This is the second part of the assessment, and it looks at the types of sedimentary rocks. So through the activities that the children have been doing in class already, students should be able to identify and characterise the 3 different types of sedimentary rock. So for this activity, they need to cut out all of the boxes put the titles at the top, and then glue all the characteristics and pictures that match each heading. The rubric I'd created was designed to suit Year 4 students. It is student-friendly language and allows the students to look at how well they think they completed the assessment and what they still need further help with. This self-assessment helps the teacher to grasp what the students think they know and what they need further development in.